Welcome to Share Talk, the only podcast where investors come first.
We have Paul Johnson, Executive Director of Power Metal Resources, which until recently used to go under the name African Battery Metals. The company has a number of projects in Africa covering a multitude of different minerals. So firstly, Paul, how are you?
Oh, very good, thank you.
Okay, so is it going to be third time lucky with the name change this time?
Oh, that's a cruel question almost. Well, it was Sula Iron and Gold originally, then changed its name, I think in late 17 to African Battery Metals, and now it's Power Metal Resources. So, well, we hope it's going to be third time lucky, yes.
Oh, that's good to hear. And for those who aren't familiar with the company, is there a quick summary you can give of what it actually does?
Yeah, sure. It's you hear this term a lot, but it's a exploration and development company focused on Africa in the battery and power metals. So that would be focused on copper, nickel, lithium, cobalt, and a variety of other things potentially related there too.
Okay, so you've got quite a number of different projects in Africa, so let's see if we can get an update on some of them, and we'll start with Cameroon, the pitting work that's taking place there. I think you can give us a bit more insight?
Of course, yeah. We announced we were continuing. Just to step back, actually, the business announced that on the refinancing and restructuring in February that it would undertake a strategic and operational review to check all the projects and see what was going on and make sure that we were happy to proceed and how to proceed. So we wanted to spend our money very carefully rather than just throwing money at everything. We announced we were proceeding with Cameroon a little way back, and also an exploration program. The Cameroon project, our license areas sit pretty much adjacent or very close to the very large Nkamuna deposit, which is, I think, the largest cobalt defined resource outside of the DRC. And their mineralization typically is below about a 6-meter horizon. So you have to go down about 6 meters before you get to their mineralization under the ground. So what we've done is we've launched a pitting program in our license areas where we're digging holes down to a maximum around 15 meters, taking samples. And what we're trying to do is mirror the geology of Nkamuna. If we can do that, then that project becomes extremely valuable to our company. The cost of doing it as an exercise is very modest. So for a very modest amount of expenditure, we have a chance to prove up, as it were, that Cameroon project to be something quite substantial. The results and updates on the project will be coming out in the quite near term. So looking forward to finding out what the results show.
Okay, good. So work ongoing, basically, and we'll get an update fairly soon.
Yes.
Brilliant. All right, how about the Democratic Republic of Congo, then? You've got a copper asset there.
Well, yes, so we have, it seems. We conducted a termite mound sampling program across the project. Now, many people won't be familiar with this, but effectively you sample the termite mounds and then you do some XRF testing on the samples, and it gives you an indication as to the type and nature of mineralization in the area. When we got the initial update back from operations on the ground, there was a 7-kilometer copper anomaly right through the heart of our licensed area, which was, we expected some reasonable results, but we didn't expect such a profound result, as it were, and that was fantastic. So we're waiting for the full detailed update on that, and we can provide the information on that to the market, and then we can also look at what's the next stage, because now we want to push ahead with this, obviously, and do some further work. You don't often get such a large anomaly in the way that it's been presented, and it's really one of our major targets now within the business.
Okay, another one that's ongoing, and see what happens there. How about the Ivory Coast? You've been very quiet there.
Yeah, well, that was one of the original 3 project areas or 3 countries of operation. We're still looking at the Ivory Coast in the project. We're doing work in the background. And as soon as we have some further information on that, we will release to the market. But that work is ongoing, albeit sat there in the background quietly. People can't see the full extent of that, but we will come out to market in due course and let them know what's happening.
Okay, fair enough. What about the joint venture you've got with Katoro, the Hernettie nickel project? Can you give us a bit of a background there and just see where we are?
Yeah, well, that deserves a little bit more explanation, because we invested £100,000 in Katoro Gold at 1p a share when the share price was half a penny. In essence, we overpaid by £50,000, or we paid a premium of 50,000. That premium enabled us to acquire 25% of the Hernettie nickel project, which was 100% owned by Katoro. We also have a right for the next just under 12 months to increase that 25% to 35%, so another 10% by paying Katoro £25,000. Now, since that time, the price of Katoro has increased, and I think at the moment sits at 1.05p a share. So it's great for us as a business, because we own 10 million shares that are now pretty much valued at what we paid for them. But in terms of the project, that's our real keen interest, because the Hernettie nickel project has been around for a little while. It was previously housed in Kibo Mining. Kibo sold the project late last year to Katoro, which is listed on AIM with the ticker KAT. And it's a project I've been following for quite a few years. Obviously, back in the days with Metal Tiger, we invested in Kibo Mining, and I think we were very fortunate, because Metal Tiger put 150,000 into Kibo and made about £1 million in a couple of weeks, because the price rocketed from, I think, 1.5p entry up to intraday 12p. So one of the package of licenses that they held was Hernettie. It's a license that's had quite a bit of work done on it in the past, but principally by the Geological Survey, which has produced quite a large amount of data about the Hernettie Itizo ultramafic complex. And there are some very major targets. Now, those that like to research should perhaps look back to 2015 and Kibo Mining announcements in relation to Hernettie, and they will see a lot more information about that project. We think it falls within the definition of elephant target projects, very large scale targets for nickel. There's a number of other targets in there, including lithium, and we're working with Katoro right now to push the project forward as actively, progressively as we can. They actually have identified a number of very large-scale targets already, and recently conducted a soil sampling program over the license, and that confirmed an additional exploration target. So it's quite alive and bubbly project. It's not really valued by the market greatly, and I think as we start to articulate, which we will do through RNS, the project's potential and what we intend to do exploration wise, then we think it will get more recognition. Now, just skipping back, if you don't mind, back to our investment in Katoro, we have Power Metal Resources have 10 million shares in Katoro. We have 10 million warrants at 1.25p. And what's forgotten about with Katoro is it also has slightly in excess of 750,000 ounces of JORC-compliant gold in Tanzania in its portfolio. So taken together, they have a very substantial gold deposit that's confirmed to JORC-compliant level. They have this very, very high impact and very large-scale target Hernettie nickel project. They're debt free, they have cash on the balance sheet, and they have an AIM listing. So we think their current market capitalization of 1.9 million, I think, is particularly low, and it has great potential to rise much higher. Now, if it will do the same kind of rise as Kibo Mining did for Metal Tiger back in 2014, I don't know, but there's that potential, and it will be interesting to see how that plays out.
Wow, so plenty there. It wouldn't be fair if we didn't sort of probe a question and say, Botswana, are you back there as Power Metal Resources?
Oh, well, there you go. I mean, absolutely. Metal Tiger did very well from Botswana, so I suppose I've always been attracted to going back into that country. It's a stable, secure operating environment. Everything is done properly. There are no problems, issues, and so on. You just have to follow the rules, regulations, and law, which any sensible, reasonable, and respectfully operator would do. We have signed a transaction. It was announced to market with Kalahari Key Mineral Exploration. We've bought 18.26% of the equity in that company. It's a private Botswanan company, and it has a single project which is the Malopo Farms Complex project. Now, there's plenty of information about this. If anyone wants to have a look, it's kalaharikey.co.uk is their website. And you can go and have a look at all the pictures, images, lots of text, lots of analysis for you to look at. And they have been working in Botswana for around 5 years. They followed the traditional model in Botswana where you have targets under sand cover. You don't get expressions at surface or outcrops that you can easily test. So you have to fly what they call helicopter airborne electromagnetic flights over where you're looking for potential targets under the ground. When you get the data back, as they have done recently, they identified 17 targets that may, or conductors that may host mineralization. They're looking for nickel, platinum, copper, all the usual elements you would expect in that part of the world, and they're doing ground magnetics now. So we gave them getting on for $200,000 or just underneath, and that money is being spent on ground exploration to refine the targets, do further work, obviously near to the surface. They can increase the quality of data with regard to the targets and prioritize those targets. They've got some quite shallow targets, which is good for that part of the world. And the aim is that once they've spent this money and done this work, they will have some very, very refined targets that will need to be drilled. Now, Power Metal Resources, I'm still struggling with the change of name, it's only day one, has the rights by the end of the year, so by 31 December 19, to earn into a 40% direct project interest in the Malopo Farms Complex project by spending US dollar 500,000 by the end of December 2020. So quite a long time span. I think what investors worry about with these scenarios is that if you have very large expense commitments, which we don't, it's a very modest expense commitment, and if they're compressed over short timescales, then you can face funding pressures and so on. So ours is a modest commitment over an extended funding period. If that money will go into drilling holes into their principal targets. Now, we don't have to wait, forever and a day, as it were, right to the end of our effective option period at the end of 19, and we don't have to wait for spending that money to the end of 2020. It just gives us flexibility so we're not under too much pressure. But we are quite eager to see what the outcome is of their ground-based work that they're undertaking now. That will enable us to make a decision as to whether we want to proceed to the next stage and to earn into that 40%. If we do that, we'll have approximately 51% effective economic interest in that project, which is a whacking great big percentage. I think if you recall back in the day, Metal Tiger had a 30% interest. Well, we would have a 51% interest. We will be involved at board level for KKME, the holding company, and we will be involved on the operating committee in a full joint venture arrangement so that we can really participate in the decision making and work with them along the way. So these are, again, a major targets. Now, if you look across our business at the moment, obviously we're working on Cameroon, and we'll see what the results are. We're assessing the Ivory Coast and so on. But in terms of the DRC, we have a major copper target with a 7-kilometer strike, as it were, based on the work undertaken to date. We have pretty significant targets, well, very significant targets in Tanzania with the Hernettie nickel project, and in Botswana we have, again, elephant scale targets that we're going for. We're trying to make our company focus on very, very cost effective targeted exploration work that will potentially yield quite dramatic results, in that we either find more information about projects in a manner that we think, yes, this potentially could be a significant elephant deposit, or potentially actually find an elephant deposit which will dramatically transform the company and obviously the valuation of the company for shareholders. So we're going about it very carefully. We're managing our cash. The last thing you want to do as a company that's had financial challenges previously is to run out of money, as it were. So we've been very careful, cautious, spending our money very steadily and carefully, making sure we do the right things. and we're very, very optimistic at the moment that we can find something that's interesting for shareholders.
Well, you've got a number of targets there. You've got so many different ones to choose from, so hopefully one of them will come to fruition, like you say. Final question then. If you were to describe Power Metal Resources as a song, what would you go with?
Blimey. Well, that's a question for you. I suppose, if we're aspirational, I suppose I'm always a lover of Frank Sinatra, so I would say Fly Me to the Moon. But I get into trouble for saying that. So I have to caveat that by saying we need to, of course, have success in our exploration programs, and exploration carries a great degree of risk, and you might not get what you look for. But we're optimistic here. We've got the new name. It feels good. Look at the portfolio we've been able to assemble over the last 4 months, and the work that's gone into assembling that portfolio, and it's absolutely fabulous. You know, we're operationally active, working hard on 4 projects. The news flow should be robust, and the the finances are well in order. We've got I think now a good building message to market. We've got to get through the switchover of the name and the ticker and so on, because the ticker's gone from ABM to POW, and that just needs a bit of administration in the background. But otherwise, it's all building really nicely, and I think we've got a great shot, as I felt in a number of different companies and scenarios before, and they've performed well. So looking forward to the next few weeks and months.
Yeah, plenty to aspire to, especially with that song choice. So, Paul, it's been good talking to you, and we'll catch up with you soon.
That's great. Thanks very much.
Thank you for listening. Remember to visit our website for more news and other podcasts at www.share-talk.com.